sense to others.
American, young, old, rich, poor.
I'm Judy Strand, and on behalf of the Commission for Senior Services, I welcome you to this great event, the first ever Oregon White House Conference on Aging. Thank you for being here. I'm really honored to represent the Governor's Commission. It is a vital voice of advocacy for all Oregonians, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the ideas that you're going to bring forward today that are going to inform our nation. I also want to make some special acknowledgments of the sponsors and contributors for today's event. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee. I also need to acknowledge Ann McQueen, who staffed this conference, and I would like her to be identified. Where is Ann? Where is she? There she is. So this would not happen without her, and I want all of you to know that. Believe me, we couldn't have done it. So great gratitude there. I wanted to start by acknowledging the fact that many of our cultures, especially our indigenous cultures, value elders in a way that is exemplary, and that many of our immigrant communities that now live in Oregon are showing us that same example. However, I believe that our dominant culture has not yet caught on, and I think that that has prompted a number of comments from a number of aging advocates. One is Gloria Steinem, who said, "At my age, people often ask me if I'm passing the torch. I explain that I'm keeping my torch, thank you very much, and I'm using it to light the torches of others. Because only if each of us has a torch will there be enough light." So in light of all of that, I wanted to think a little bit about what we're focusing on today. In Seattle at the regional conference, which a few of us had a chance to attend, we talked about a lot of important things: economic security, underpaid caregiver staff, absence of culturally specific and culturally responsive aging, lack of mental health services, lack of geriatric specialists, inadequate transportation, all kinds of issues that all of you know better than I do. And all of those are incredibly important. At the same time, we know that in Oregon, we've been a state with some innovative ideas. We've stepped forward in prevention and community-based care and person-centered practice in a very bold way, and I know that we'll do that again today, and that's why we want to hear your voices. I also would like to challenge us to think beyond just looking at the needs one by one and look at the interconnectedness of the needs and what that might bring to our minds in terms of a creative solution for this growing population of older adults. And what if we looked at the ways we can capitalize on the age wave and view that 1 in 5 of us who will be 65 and older by 2030 as a true untapped resource for our community as a whole? A few years back, I was 15, it was 1971, I heard about Maggie Kuhn, who we know started the Grey Panther movement, and she was really of great interest to me at that time, and I wrote her a letter. And of all things, she wrote back to me. I found her letter recently in my family's home when I was cleaning out the home. And in that letter, she encouraged me to be an advocate and fight ageism. She was, for me, one of those lights, one of those torches. And there was something that I'm sure one of you sent me recently that talked about what older adults could be for us in our society. And Maggie Kuhn said that as risk takers, older adults can change the world. They can humanize society. They have 5 roles that she talked about. They are mentors who teach the young, mediators who resolve civil, racial, and intergenerational conflict, monitors of public bodies who serve as watchdogs of City Hall and Congress, mobilizers of social change, and motivators of a society who urge people away from self-interest and toward public good. Our world desperately needs those 5 roles. And think of it. Think of all the conflicts, the intercultural conflicts, the global issues that affect our planet. This is the time to bring our elders into the public square. And I know when I talk about them, the older adults, I'm looking at a room where we understand that they is we, because we want that place when it's our time to humanize and heal the world. And I hope that today we'll come up with some fantastic ways to do that. Okay, so getting to the nitty-gritty, you have these lovely green folders, and as we go forward, they will guide you, and they are color-coded and everything. So in here, you will see the agenda. You'll see a number of pieces of paper on the right. There are issue brief sheets that are color-coded by each issue that we're talking about today, and that will help give you a little background information. And there are some conference evaluations that are purple, and we really would love to have your feedback about how we're doing with this conference today. So I'd now like to introduce Marty Cahill, the Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital CEO. Since 2013, Marty has been Chief Operations Officer of Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital and has served as the CEO at Samaritan North Lincoln Hospital and Director of Physician Relations for Samaritan Health Services. We're very thankful for this lovely conference space. So, Marty?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is a great event. Thank you for your participation, and welcome to our event center. We've literally, in the last 2 weeks, opened our hotel. We've got this event center for the last year, so we're starting to utilize it. So let us know how it goes. Give us feedback. We would greatly appreciate that. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation, the coordinators for this event. I think that your help today will be useful in directing policy and direction for the next 10 years. Some of the things that you're going to be talking about and hearing about today: retirement security, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and elder justice. And I think together we can all build healthier communities, and I believe that the work here today will be heard back in DC by this summer. So I wish you well. If you have time, there's a jam-packed agenda for you today. But if you can get out and take a look at the garden, there's a Japanese healing garden right next to this facility, nice koi pond. So go out and relax a little bit in between your sessions. Have a good day and welcome. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Danny Ledesma from Governor Kate Brown's office. Danny is the governor's Housing and Human Services Policy Advisor, and prior to coming to the governor's office, she served as the Director of Equity, Policy, and Communications at the City of Portland's Housing Bureau. Danny?
Hi, good to see you. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our Governor, Kate Brown, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for all the work that you're going to do today and that you do every day on behalf of older adults so that to ensure their safety, that they're financially secure, and that their needs are being met. As you know, our communities are stronger, they can thrive when the outcome of the work that you are doing is fulfilled. And as you know, our governor is a strong supporter and champion of the work that you do, and is here to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as we contend with some of the issues that face older adults. So today, as you contend with and discuss and come up with the best and possible ideas around policy change impacting retirement security, healthy aging, elder justice, and long-term supports and services for older Americans, we're really looking forward to the outcome of these conversations that you're having and also how we can support that moving forward. We'd like to thank our hosts that are here, today, all of the keynote speakers and panelists for sharing your wisdom and information with us. And we'd really like to thank the Governor's Commission on Senior Services for your service, your ongoing service and commitment to this issue. We'd like to thank our chair, Judy Strand, and what the governor would like to make sure that you all know is that we're ready to work with you. We've got really strong leaders at the state. Our DHS director, Erin Kelly Seal, to work with you, and we look forward to continuing this important work. So thank you.
Thanks, Danny. We now get to hear from Erin Kelly Seal, the director of the Oregon Department of Human Services. Erin started as the director in April of 2011, and she's done a lot of work in safety and protective service and health outcomes for older adults and people with disabilities. And she's been a very strong support to the commission as well, and we're really happy to have her as a leader in our state. So where are you there?
Trying to be quick.
You're being very
Keep
quick.
us on time.
Oops, there
Sorry,
we go.
Judy. Good morning, everyone. All right, come on, Oregon. Let's have some energy here for our federal partners who want to hear from us. This is an amazing opportunity for us here in Oregon. Thank you for that and for bringing the conference here to Lebanon, of all places. Thank you for driving through the farmlands to be here. I'm sure many of you were wondering, as was I, if we were headed in the right direction as we came to this beautiful site, but I'm glad you all made it. It's amazing to think that a conference in Lebanon can sell out in a matter of days, hours, weeks, and that we have a full house, and I'm excited about the energy and insight and intellect that's in the room today, so thank you for being here. In Oregon, we can't help but take pride in all that we've accomplished on behalf of older adults that happen to reside here who decide to come here because of how fantastic a place it is to live. We should be really proud. We had some pioneering efforts that came decades before us, who set the bar really high in terms of a vision for our state around what it should look like to age, both in terms of health and healthy environments and places that we want to be able to live, and also in terms of a long-term care system that supports people to live at home and in community, and with choice and with dignity and with independence. And those are values and a vision that we hold very true and fast in our hearts, and we should. When I go around and I meet with the different staff who do the work on behalf of our agency and on behalf of all of you, I always ask them, so what's going well and what's keeping you up at night? So I thought I would talk about a few things that are relevant to today's discussion that I think are going well here in Oregon, and a couple of things that keep us up at night that we're looking forward to you all having some conversation about today. So what's going well here in Oregon? In terms of the seniors in the state who are low income, it's extraordinary that 87% of them get to remain at home or living in community settings. We can boast of that fact here in Oregon, and we should, because those values that I talked about have really driven a system that supports individual plans for people that allow them to be able to live with dignity, choice, and independence in whatever way is best for them at the right place at the right time. We've accomplished much in that regard, and it's been a lot of hard work, and a lot of you in this room were part of that, and I appreciate it. We also feel good about our third in the nation ranking around several things. I'm going to read them because I won't get them all right unless I do, but affordability, access, choice of setting and provider, support for family caregivers, and effective transitions. That's quite a list, and we're proud to be third in the country. We'd love to be first, though, right? So let's talk about a couple things that keep us up at night that we need to keep working on together. And I will say, others today are here to impart their wisdom upon us. One of the jokes is some of the first people who speak know the least, so I'll just throw that out there for you, but here you go. So one of the things that keeps me up is that women and people of color tend to have the least saved for retirement. And even beyond that, 48% of all Oregonians will rely only on Social Security for their retirement savings. That will afford them to live with about $12,000 a year of income. Oregon ranks in the top 5 states in the country for hunger and food insecurity among older adults. 1 in 3 Oregonians age 65 plus fall every year, with 20 to 30% of those falls resulting in bruises, hip fractures, and traumatic brain injury, which ultimately compromises the ability to live independently. Health disparities among people of color in this state remain stubbornly high, and access to care in rural and frontier Oregon is exceedingly difficult, especially for specialty care like gerontology and mental health. We screened over 35,000 abuse and neglect reports in 2013, And we saw nearly a 40% increase in substantiated abuse involving older adults that live at home or in community settings. Oregon seniors and people with disabilities are estimated to have lost over $11.5 million in savings and equity in 2013 as a result of financial exploitation. We clearly have work to do. That's why you're all here. Just 2 years ago, my grandfather, at the age of 92, passed away in an assisted living facility here in Oregon. He was an amazing individual who greatly influenced my life. He survived abuse as a child, the Great Depression, a mental health challenge that threatened his career as an educator, but he taught me many, many things, many important things, like how to waltz and to polka, how to drive a tractor, how to bake, how to garden. But some of the most important things he taught me were these, and I think you're going to apply them today to the work. People can do anything if they put their minds to it. In my case, around the time of potty training, that looks like this with my grandfather. Papa, I need to go potty. Mind you, I'm not potty trained yet. Well, then why don't you just go? You know where the toilet is. Okay, so I did. My mom says I was potty trained after that. So people can do anything if you put your mind to it. We are put here on this earth not for the good of ourselves, but for the good of others. Hard work pays off. So as you put your minds to some of the most pressing challenges here today of our time, you will be asked to set aside what might be in your own personal best interest for the good of our nation, for the good of all Oregonians. And it's abundantly clear that the hard work that you do will make a difference in the lives of many, many people following the outcome of today and the recommendations, setting the course for the next decades of change and innovation and pioneering spirit that we need to have around some of the challenges we're facing now.
Welcome back. I just want to thank everybody for their attention to all these important issues. And I know it's a lot of listening, but I think it's going to serve us well this afternoon when we have our conversations. I'd like to introduce Fred Steele, who's going to moderate our Elder Justice panel. Fred is Oregon's Older Americans Act legal services developer, and he's also the current chair of the National Association of Legal Service Developers. He focuses on infrastructure improvements that enhance the rights, independence, and safety of vulnerable adults, particularly of those that interact with long-term services and supports in our system. And he has been very active in elder abuse prevention work groups and also is a member of the Oregon Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, or PULSE task force. Fred has done a lot of work in establishing a statewide working interdisciplinary network of guardianship stakeholders called WINGS, and he's a graduate of the Willamette University's College of Law with a JD and a certificate in law and government, and of Portland State University's with a Master's of Public Health. He's an active member of the Oregon State Bar. Fred?
Good morning, all, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And I'm going to try to be quick with my comments, because the one thing I want to convey to you and remind you, in case I think it's been kind of implied throughout this morning, but you're here to work. We all are here to work, and we're going to be working a lot, especially this afternoon. I'm fortunate to get to serve as the moderator for this panel, but also as facilitator for the Elder Justice panel and work group that we're going to be convening this afternoon. And we want all of your ideas, because we're not just here to work, more so we're here to influence. And we need all of your ideas, the experiences that you have out in the local communities, state level, regional, whatever it is, your experiences, and in particular in my interest around elder justice and what we can do for elder justice. And we need your input. And so we have this expert panel here from Oregon. We have the head of the state Abuse Prevention and Investigations Office. We have a key player at the Department of Justice. And we have a person that serves as judge by day and kind of superhero key change agent at night, for any of you that know Judge Tennyson. And if you don't know her, you should get to know her. But we have some people that want to hear your thoughts and ideas and take what you can provide this afternoon. So take what you hear now, absorb it for elder justice purposes, how we can improve infrastructure here in Oregon, and then we're going to come to the table this afternoon and make those suggestions or recommendations. So with that, I'm just going to get us jumped into our panel here. First, Marie Cervantes. She's the director of the Office of Adult Abuse Prevention and Investigations. That's an office that serves both the Oregon Department of Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority. Marie has more than 21 years of education and experience in the area of safety and protection of vulnerable adults. She is a member of the National Adult Protective Services Association, the National Adult Protective Services Policy and Research Committees, and is on the board of directors for the National Center for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. So, Marie.
I'm going to move this down. I'm just a little bit shorter than Fred. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today and speak to you about elder justice. In Oregon, last year we received more than 37,000 reports of abuse, of abuse and neglect. If our projections are correct, those numbers will double in the next 5 to 8 years. Sadly, given what our studies tell us about underreporting, we know this is only the tip of the iceberg for Oregon, for other states, and ultimately for our nation. When I thought about the key themes today and what we're discussing, something really stood out for me. One of these issues stands alone in its ability to unravel our collective plans to ensure these rights of older Americans. One of these issues has already taken billions of dollars from older Americans, made them 3 times more likely to die sooner, 4 times more likely to go to a nursing home, and turn to Medicaid as a result of having their money stolen from them. One of these issues costs families, financial institutions, and taxpayers billions of dollars each year and impacts more than 5 million people. One of these issues involves American families and the children that grow up in those families to perpetrate abuse. If we know that one of the most common individuals responsible for elder abuse is adult children, and we know that one of the most common individuals responsible for child abuse are the parents, then I offer you, don't we have an issue with American families that we need to pay attention to? Abuse of our elders takes away everything that we're talking about today, everything that honors what they've worked for during their lifetime. We see thousands of cases like this that end in tragic decline, loss of life, health, savings, and dignity. Eva's story is one story that I want to share with you to illustrate this. Eva and her husband, they planned. They did everything right. Her husband was a plumber by trade. After her husband passed away, she was left with plenty of money to live at home and receive the services and support that she needed. She had enough money to live out the remainder of her life with a sense of financial security and receive the health care that she needed. She could get to the store, buy her groceries, run errands, do her banking, essentially provide for herself. This all changed when somebody spotted her out in her yard. The perpetrator in this case offered to run some errands for her. Then she decided that she would help Eva with some care, and then with her banking. The person slowly went from being an acquaintance to a caregiver to the daughter that Eva never had. At the very end of it, Eva lost everything. A for sale sign was put into her yard, everything in her home was auctioned off, and she was moved to a foster home where she died less than a year later. So when you think about this, and this case happened in 1999, I keep looking back at this and wondering what can we do now and what can we do differently. I pulled a couple quotes from some recent cases that I thought you might want to look at, and we asked victims around the abuse and just what their general thoughts were. And here's one of the quotes. It's complicated, but when you reach my age, you choose to put up with the little things to keep the peace. And I read another case last night where an elder stated, if I have to pay the perpetrator to be good to me, I will. So this is a time to roll up our sleeves. It's like Fred said, we're here to work. We're here to take some action and come up with solutions today. So I ask that you keep 3 things in mind as we go to the breakout sessions later on today. There is a cost for doing nothing. Abuse is costly. It increases healthcare system costs, cost to economic institutions, and for people like Eva, their lives are cut short. We need to understand more about the impact of lives to people who are abused or neglected. and measure the cost of abuse and measure the cost of inaction. Second, we need to evolve from a reactive system and invest in research. That way we can use education and prevention to deter abuse and keep it from happening in the first place. For many people like Eva, once the money's gone, that's it. There is no ability to earn that money back over the course of her lifetime. And third, we need a dedicated and sustained investment in the people doing the work. Adult protective service workers. Many of them have dedicated their lives, their careers to the service of others. Still, they remain some of the most unrecognized service workers in the nation. They struggle each day under immense caseloads, grappling with some of the most horrific human conditions you can imagine. As a group, they stick around. They believe in what they do. So we took some time and we asked them, what gets you up every morning? What makes you want to come to work? And here's what they had to say. This is Mandy. Mandy works in our Klamath Falls office. She was told once that a job is just a job, but not to her. She believes they're part of who we are and define us. And this is Mike McNeil. 10 years ago, his dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He quit his job and became a full-time caregiver for his dad. It was a very life-changing event for him, and after his dad passed away, he wanted to be in a career where he could help others. And this is Stacy. After Stacy's grandmother died, her grandfather met somebody who took her grandfather for $1.5 million. Her grandfather was very depressed. It was a very sad situation. That always stuck with Stacy, and she decided that she wanted a career in this particular area. I would offer that Mike, Mandy, and Stacy are the heroes of this generation. They're a group called APS, and sometimes they're as invisible as the people that they provide service to. They're people just like them that I talked about working across the United States in service to our elders every day. And what I would also offer that our formal and informal caregivers are also worthy of our applause for the work that they do every day, and they also remain very invisible as well. We owe them a great deal of gratitude. In closing, if you believe in the concept of active aging that encourages a full participation of older adults in society, that emphasizes competence and knowledge of our elders, and that moves away from this loss and decline type concept, then I think you're in good company today. So I thank you for the time, for being here, and let's come up with some solutions here in Oregon. Thank you.
Our next panelist is the Honorable Katherine Tennyson. She is a circuit court judge in Multnomah County. You know, you could read the bio for her in the booklet here, and it talks about, it has the caseload that she works on, that she serves as the secretary of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Prior to that, as she chaired the Family Violence and Domestic Relations Advisory Committee for the council for 3 years. But as I alluded to before, she is a key change agent on elder justice issues here in Oregon, and that's not in her bio. But I think we're fortunate to have her here and have her time today between trials and her caseload and her workload as judge. So with that, I'll hand it over.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to reveal one of the biggest mysteries not usually told to normal people, so get ready. A judge's decision is only as good as the information we have when we're making it, and how we get that information is controlled by a very tight set of rules. I'm going to repeat that just for a second. A judge's decision is only as good as the information we have when we're making it, and how we get that information is controlled by a very tight set of rules. So if you want a very good judge, you need to have very good lawyers, you need to have very good adult protective service workers, you need to have very good law enforcement, you need to have all of the people outside the courtroom doing their jobs very well, and then knowing how to get the information to me so that I can make the decision that's the right and good one. So that's step number one in terms of the improving your judicial system and the judicial system responsiveness to the issues that you care about, is making sure that all of the people in the community who are in charge of gathering the information, investigating cases, and getting the information into the courtroom know what they're supposed to do and how to do it well. Second major thing is, once judges have the information, they actually need to understand it, right? So this is a story that I tell sometimes, and I'm going to try to abbreviate it because we're on a tight timeline today. But when I was in second grade, the nurse came around and did the eye test in school. What was discovered was that I needed to go see a doctor about my eyes because I couldn't see very well. And so I lived in a small town. My mom took me into Spokane, the big city. We went to the ophthalmologist. I got my prescription, and that was back in the days when, it wasn't any sort of an hour turnaround. We waited a week for those glasses to come in the mail from Spokane. And my mom brought them to school, and I stood in the back of the room and put them on, and I could actually read the blackboard from the back of the room. And until that moment, I didn't know anybody could read the blackboard from the back of the room. I just thought that was something that nobody could do. And the reason I tell you this story is because I think you don't see what you're not looking for. You don't see what you're not looking for if you don't know that it's there. And that's the way it is with all of us as it relates to elder abuse. The story that the previous speaker told about the lady losing all of her fortune to a friendly person who found her mark is just not an uncommon story. But for judges, we're not used to finding these stories. We're trained up one side and down the other about child abuse and being mandatory reporters for child abuse, but we don't know that stuff about elder abuse. Well, good news. Your judicial department has started to recognize that and started to recognize it well before we all became mandatory reporters in January of 2015. So we have had several trainings over the course of the last several years, both specifically in my county, but also all over the state, trying to get judges to be broadly competent on these issues. And we have a ways to go. We're not there yet, but we are certainly doing what we can do to make sure that judges have the understanding that they need in order to be able to spot the problem in the fact situations that we see that wouldn't be obvious. Like, for example, when a man stands up in front of you at a criminal sentencing and says, "Judge, you can't put me in jail because I'm the sole caretaker of my mother." Well, what's your mom's name? Where does she live? And tell me a little bit about that. And then you get the information and you go right into your office and you pick up the phone and you call Ms. Cervantes. And you say, guess what? This guy that I just sentenced for meth says he's the sole caretaker of his mother. Don't you think you ought to go look at him? And they do. But up until the moment where you start talking to judges about the importance of doing that, they don't know. It just doesn't. Anybody in their right mind would do that if they said, I'm the sole caretaker of my child. But you don't think about it when you're talking about an elder or a vulnerable adult because you're not trained to do it yet. Well, I want to tell you that your Oregon Judicial Department is on it about that. The other thing that we are doing as part of really looking at the situation up and down is to make some changes in the way we do business. Now, these changes can be small. For example, we have Elder Abuse Prevention Act restraining order hearings in Multnomah County used to be lumped in with the Family Abuse Prevention Act restraining order, which would be intimate partner violence or violence among family blood members. Elder Abuse Prevention Act restraining orders, slightly different order, obviously different clientele. So we used to put them all on for hearing at 9 a.m. But instead, what we did, very small change in the way we do business, made a huge bit of difference, is we moved all the elder orders to 10:30. More friendly time for elders, got them out of the chaos of the 9 o'clock hubbub, which always happens during that time because there are just a lot of people in the courtroom, and has made a big difference in terms of how people have access to their justice system. So that's a small change. We're also working on some big changes. Some of you may have heard of the guardianship monitoring program that lawyers and fiduciaries up in Multnomah County really started in response to a call to action. And that has been a big, big change that has required some statutory work and has required some development of a nonprofit and some other things, but it's up and running and things are happening there. And so, Ms. Blatchley was there on the very first day. But, you know, we are doing lots of different things related to that. We've now instituted a requirement in Multnomah County that if you're appointed to be a fiduciary in a case, you have to have actually a class about how to do it. What a concept, eh? Because I think that what we forget when we're lawyers and we're talking to each other is we talk in words that normal people don't understand and shouldn't actually. In fact, we talk in tones of voices that most people don't use. So I myself am banned from talking to anybody in our home that does repair work because apparently they don't like being cross-examined. I don't really understand that. But we use really long words, and we use words that most people don't actually understand. And so we really do need to break it down for people in a way that people can really get what their job is, so that they don't come in and have to apologize to me for not doing it. They can just happily go out and do it and have some confidence about what they're doing. So those are some big changes that we're making, and you can expect those things to be coming to your communities throughout the state, I think, as more judges understand what's going on there. But you can also help prompt that by talking to the presiding judges in your community and say, hey, I heard about this program. Is there any chance we can start working on it here? Don't tell them I sent you. But please do start to ask that question if you have any sort of relationship with the judges in your communities, because everybody, I will tell you, to a person, doesn't sign up to be a judge because they don't want to be good at it. Everybody who signs up to be a judge does it because they really feel like they can make a difference to their community. And sometimes we just need a little help. So if you see things that are going on where you are, if you have suggestions about how to make things better or easier, sometimes we haven't thought about it because we just don't know any different. Sometimes we're going to tell you, you know what, we can't do that because of X, Y, or Z. But it doesn't mean that you can't participate in how to improve your judicial system, and I encourage you to do that. I think that's about my time, and thank you.
One quick note that I want to make that I was going to make at the beginning is that in your conference booklet, there was going to be a fourth panelist, John Mullen from the Oregon Law Center, who was unable to be here today. If you look in the booklet, it'll say he's legislative advocate for the Oregon Law Center. So not surprisingly, in the middle of a legislative session, he had to be in Salem and not here today. Kind of a last-minute change. Our next speaker, though, we have Ellen Klem. She is the Director of Consumer Education and Outreach for the Oregon Department of Justice. Her mission is simple: prevent financial harm to Oregonians, especially older adults. Before joining the Oregon Department of Justice, Ellen worked at the American Bar Association, Commission on Law and Aging in Washington, D.C. I've been fortunate to get to know Ellen over the last few years that she's been here in Oregon, and truly appreciate all that she can bring to us here in Oregon and what we can do, again, to influence and improve our infrastructure for Oregonians. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen.
Thank you. I always get nervous following Judge Tennyson because she does such a great job and she has these really heartfelt stories. And as of late, my stories only involve small children, so they're not that exciting. So I'm Ellen Klem. As Fred said, I'm with the Oregon Department of Justice. I work for the Oregon Attorney General, and gosh, all of a sudden I'm nervous in front of everybody here. Okay, deep breath. So Ellen Rosenblum is our Attorney General, and she really cares about aging issues, and that's the whole, can you hear me? Okay, better, okay. So that's the whole reason that she hired me, because she cares about these older adults and their lives and their financial security. And gosh, I am all of a sudden just breathe in, breathe out. You're among friends. Yeah. Let me refocus. Thank you. Lots of coffee this morning as a parent of a small child. So what is the Department of Justice doing? What have we done in the past? What do we plan to do in the future? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I do want to highlight that Ellen is really committed to these issues, and she served on the bench as well with Judge Tennyson, and really cares about older adults. So moving ahead. She runs the Oregon Department of Justice, which is very large. We have about 1,300 employees, 21 offices all over the state. 9 divisions, and each one of those divisions touches on the lives of older adults. In fact, even our child support office, which you might not think, how does that interact with the lives of older adults? Well, we have a lot of grandparents who are caring for younger children, and so that's one of our largest divisions at the Department of Justice, and we do focus there on the lives of older adults as well. But most of our work involves criminals and people that abuse older adults, and we do that in a number of ways through our criminal division and through our appellate division. So our criminal division will actually charge these abusers with a crime, multiple crimes, frequently. And then the appellate division, when the criminal appeals, will step in and say, no way, stop, let's back up. And so we do that on a daily basis, and sometimes some of the cases that we have are pretty interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of them. One of them is still on appeal, and that's a fairly interesting case where the individual basically argued that he or she didn't have to pay the money back, and that was because of this really small technical thing in the law that I won't bore you with, but they made a pretty strong argument that they didn't have to pay the money back, and our appellate attorneys went in and argued in front of the court that, no, in fact, they do. It was not a gift. That was the argument, that it fell under this very narrow exception of gifts. We're talking about the older best friend who just shows up at the older adult's house, says, I'm going to help you pay your bills, I'm going to help you, mow your lawn, all of these things, and argued that these were gifts. Over a period of maybe 5 years, this individual had financially exploited the older adult out of like $127 million. Yeah, so that doesn't sound like a gift to me. I don't know, maybe to you guys it does. But, we went in and argued that that's not going to stand. We've also represented, because we're the state agency and we're the attorneys for the state, we've done things like represented the long-term care ombudsman in some appeals where we were not successful, unfortunately, in that case, but went on to argue that the long-term care ombudsman should have access to the individual residing in this facility. Unfortunately, like I said, we were not successful, but we're moving in the direction of taking on more of these cases. We have partnerships with the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office. We have partnerships with DHS where we're getting referrals for those cases. We also have a very large and robust financial fraud consumer protection section. So not only does appellate and criminal and child support, but the financial fraud section takes complaints from individual consumers and works those complaints. If you bought a lemon car, for example, we might work that complaint. We had a case a couple years ago in Grants Pass where a car dealership had sold the same Cadillac. I don't know how this is possible, but they'd sold the same Cadillac to the same 92-year-old man who did not have a driver's license 9 times. Yeah, so a couple other things I want to hit on with the short time that I have left is Judge Tennyson mentioned we're training lawyers about elder abuse. You wouldn't know it despite my nervousness when I started, but I give presentations every day throughout the state, which is why this is so weird, by the way. I talk to senior groups all the time. In fact, like 2 months ago, I testified in front of Congress. So I'm kind of surprised that I testified in front of Congress and I wasn't nervous, but you guys in this field are making me really sweaty. So anyways, I travel around the state and I talk to older adults every day about how they can stay safe from frauds and scams and how we can help do that as the Department of Justice. And again, when I came on board, because the AG is so passionate about the lives of older adults, we worked very hard to make sure that all of our materials that we distribute are senior friendly. So that means they've all been written in accordance with the National Institute on Aging's Guide for Older Eyes. So if you're interested in seeing any of those materials, passing them out, please let me know. I'm happy to give them to you, and they're free. So one last thing I want to touch on is, I talked a little bit about what we've been doing and what we kind of hope to do. We've got a lot of legislation that we've introduced. Some people in this room have been very generous with their time and helping to support these bills that we've asked for, including things like a legislative fix where the appeals court said,
A woman financially exploited her aging grandfather, and the court said, yeah, you're guilty of that, and you owe him restitution. And then the gentleman died, and the attorney for this young woman said, oh, well, he's dead, so there's nobody to pay any money to. And the Court of Appeals said, yeah, you're right. So we took a look at that case and we said, so in Oregon, if I find an old enough victim and I financially exploit them and they die, so we introduced a piece of legislation to fix that. So I've talked a little bit about what we've done, what we hope to do. One of the things that we hope to do is get some money to fund these statewide elder abuse resource prosecutors. I see a lot of heads nodding. That's because we've had people come and testify on our behalf, like AARP, Alzheimer's Association, Long-Term Care, Governor's Commission on Senior Services. All of you have been so generous and committed to lobbying for this. And the gist of this is that these cases are very difficult to prosecute. They're very time intensive, lots of documents, especially in terms of financial exploitation. And so what we're asking the legislature for is some assistance for these district attorneys throughout the state. They're overburdened. They have a lot of difficult cases to deal with already. We don't need to add another thing to their plate. So we want to hire somebody at the Department of Justice who can help these district attorneys do that. They can put a witness on the stand who's been subject to undue influence, who maybe has some dementia, and they can walk that district attorney through what that process looks like, help them get a conviction, and get these guys off the streets. So if you're interested in knowing more about this, it's a very small ask. It's about $500,000 that we asked for. It's in our larger budget. We are hopeful that they're going to give us these positions. It's one attorney and then 2 investigators. So maybe somebody who has some experience in forensic accounting or somebody who has some experience as a nurse who can help us investigate these cases. So cross your fingers for that. If you want to call your legislator, that would be great too. And with that, I think my time is almost up. So thank you for being kind. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me here at this phone number or email address. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the breakout session and hearing from you about what else we can be doing as the Department of Justice. I mean, we are the lawyers for you, for the state. What can we do to get these guys off the streets? So thank you.
So my understanding in coming in to moderate is that we were going to have time for questions. For our panel, we actually do. We have about 5 minutes. First hand up. I'm just going to go there, and we're bringing a mic around. Like I said.
Raise your hand if you have a question and
Thank
keep it up, and we'll just sort of randomly choose some people. We've got a couple of mic runners we'll have.
Okay, I was in a show choir in college, so I get a mic and I want to do a little song and dance, but I will refrain. I just want to let you all know a little more information about SAVO, Special Advocates for Vulnerable Oregonians. It's what Judge Tennyson touched upon about the guardianship monitoring program. SAVO, it's www.savooregon.org. It is a nonprofit, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, if you got some money burning a hole in your pocket. But also I want you to look into it, into bringing it into your communities as well. It started out in Multnomah County with the very explicit goal of spreading statewide. So go there to learn more information. Thank you.
Next question?
Any questions out there for our expert panelists? And we
There's one.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll just talk about it.
Look.
You just mentioned, Ms. Klem, about information that we could have access to from the Department of Justice. How do we get that information?
Great question. So let me just repeat it very quickly. How do we get more information from the Department of Justice to hand out to our friends, our family, our neighbors, our community groups? You can call me directly and I can send you whatever you need, or you can visit our website, which is oregonconsumer.gov, and contact our hotline. We have a hotline that's staffed by volunteers in Salem Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and they can fulfill those orders for you. And one important piece about why this information is free and why we want to give it to you and put it in your hands is because it's all funded by the bad acts that the awful doers in Oregon do. So this department or division of the Department of Justice is entirely self-funded. So what that means is we find that car dealer or we find that really bad, drug pharmaceutical company, and they violate one of our consumer protection laws, and not only do we make them repay the consumer, but then we fine them. And these fines are not $500. These are talking 27 million, 5 million. Significant amounts of fines go into this fund, and that's what I use to print these resources that I want you to distribute.
Do you have jurisdiction in Oregon about all these calls I get from India and Nigeria that are trying to tell me I need to pay them back stuff?
So the question is about the do not call list and just calls in general that are annoying to you. And the question is, do we as the Department of Justice have jurisdiction? And the answer is no. And just to tell you a little bit more about these calls that are originating overseas, earlier I mentioned when I did testify in front of Congress, it was about that IRS imposter scam. And what I learned in that hearing from the investigators there on a federal level is that we think that these calls are originating from legitimate call centers overseas in countries that do not care about the United States and the fact that our citizens are being robbed of their money. So the authorities are of no help. And they're in legitimate call centers, so it's very difficult for these companies that run these call centers to kind of figure out what's going on, because what they think is happening is they're using their break time to make these calls. So it's really disheartening. The best piece of advice I can give to you is just do not engage. Do not engage, do not blow a whistle into the phone, do not try to speak to a manager, don't press 1, don't speak German. I mean, on and on and on. People tell me all these crazy things that they do, and the reality is that if you're picking up the phone and you're engaging, yeah, they've got their hooks into you. And so unfortunately, they're just gonna keep calling you and calling you, and that's really sad.
My question is about the elder abuse, which you defined as various scams and physical harm. But there's another kind of elder abuse which may not fit into a justice system, and that's the psychological and emotional abuse that I myself and other people who live in a long-term care establishments feel. And when you're spoken to like you're a kindergarten student, despite all the wisdom that we talk about here today, you don't feel like a very wise person. You're old, so you're stupid, and you're sick. So there's a different kind of abuse which you can't really see and pinpoint, but it does go on. And I don't know what kind of judicial solution you can make out of that.
You're asking a judicial question?
No, I guess.
Or are you asking the adult protective service person?
Yeah, more protective services question.
Okay, so I'll respond to the emotional and verbal abuse. One of the things that I should have mentioned to you about financial abuse is that it often goes hand in hand with emotional and verbal abuse. Those two types of abuse are some of the most insidious. They really break people's spirit down, harm them, and I do believe that there needs to be more attention paid to that. We're doing more to try to gather better data about that and our response to it. It's very difficult for us to address things when people are afraid to share those with us. So it's very challenging to get that kind of information, but it is a very important type of abuse that does need to be addressed.
And I'll just add that as part of judicial training now, we work very hard to make sure that people understand, judges understand, access to justice includes being able to hear and be able to communicate effectively, and sometimes it just takes longer when when you have certain people in front of you. And people need to be patient and apply, the same sort of respect in those circumstances that they do in other circumstances. And so we work on it. We're working on it. We're not perfect, but we try to do everything we can to make sure that the experience when you come into the courthouse is not one that is trauma-infused, but rather trauma-responsive.
So our time is up, and again, real quick, thank you to the three of you and all that you do for Oregonians, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Fred, and all the panelists. And I just wanted to mention in response to your question, sir, that also I think what you're getting at is some of the discussion we've had about caregivers and the culture of care. So I think your comment should be brought forward to that discussion as well. Yeah, thank you for that. The plan is that each of you is going to take 3.50 minutes to briefly describe the group's issues and recommendations. So I don't care what order we go in. So anybody ready to start? We have elder justice, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and retirement security, but that one does need to be last. Are you ready, Fred?
Yeah, I'll jump right there.
Okay.
So I am only ready because my group was awesome that I got to work with. So great conversations in our subgroups and where we were at with recommendations. We started off looking at the 2014 Elder Justice Coordinating Council recommendations that came out at the federal level. And somebody brought that to the table. Ellen Klem, not surprisingly, brought that to the table as a starting point for our conversation, just to kind of help us think through what the feds are looking at with the subgroup conversations, and then our ensuing 45-minute full group conversation. I think really what, 3 of the 4 recommendations are things that need to and can be focused, and this is definitely our Oregon recommendation to the feds in the national level, the White House, of what can be accomplished or needs to be accomplished. I mean, all 4 of them are for the national level, and then 3 of the 4 are things that can be looked at internally in states, either whether it's through legislative action, Governor's Commission on Senior Services, or different county and state approaches. So the first one, and this one very specific at the national level, is the need for more national coordination on elder justice issues and elder abuse. There has been recently, just in October, a renaming of an office at the Administration for Community Living. They renamed the Elder Rights Office, the Elder Justice and Adult Protective Services Office. But as Marie Cervantes confirmed for me, or at least as far as she's aware, there's been no communication from that office as far as what national coordination is going to look like. But I think at the national level, I mean, and I'm even aware, I work with that office. It was a first step to rename it, to have a central location for issues of elder justice and adult protective services. But I'm aware that at least for the last year or so, they don't have a director of that office. They're in the process of hiring one now. From even what it was named previously. So there's just a lot of work to be done at the national level. And for our purposes, and I need to go back and look at my notes for our full recommendation, but it's, the need for the data coordination and collection, the awareness, just a lot of the research that needs to be done. There needs to be a lot more national coordination. So I'm going to put a lot more meat onto that for the products coming out of today. Secondly, a public awareness campaign, and this is definitely one that can and should be done at the national level and can be done at the state level. And we need to spend a lot more time looking at all abuse types was emphasized in our work group. There was some emphasis in some of the smaller groups on financial exploitation in particular, and because of the costs of financial exploitation, more awareness, more education. But the larger group that we had wanted to make sure that we were emphasizing all abuse types, sexual, physical, emotional, psychological abuse as well. An emphasis we can start moving towards, or we should start moving towards some kind of a marketing campaign. And then as a component of that, enhanced supports for victims, and ideally before people become victims, more supports, more resources, infrastructure. So there's a lot of work to be done around there. And again, a lot more even meat than that on that public awareness recommendation. Third is around law enforcement supports. Actually, I'm realizing there actually was 5. So law enforcement supports reconsiderations. We had some conversation, again, not only at the local level, what better tools can we be providing to our law enforcement to get involved in elder abuse situations that are even arguably, and in some instances, out of the hands of what adult protective services can do. We need more considerations, but definitely at the federal level as well, with the FBI, their Department of Justice at the federal level. So that would be a third recommendation. Fourth recommendation is around fiduciary reforms, fiduciary education, so guardianship, conservatorship, powers of attorney, rep payee. We had some conversations specifically around that. Definitely a recommendation at the federal level with Social Security Administration. And I am aware of some activity in that department with Social Security Administration in a subgroup that I've had the privilege of being a part of in the last 6-8 months. But there's much further to go there. A fifth recommendation specifically around, and this wasn't an initial recommendation out of the subgroups, but in the ensuing conversation of our full group really took form. But more, what I'm kind of framing is community approach supports. Around more not just multidisciplinary teams that do exist at the county levels, but more, this interdisciplinary approach to prevention issues. I would categorize our conversations and there was some conversation around, bringing in community health approaches and entities to have some conversations about how we can better really do the proactive prevention of elder abuse. So I will stop there. I'm probably over my time already. Thank you.
All right. Well, not that it's a competition, but the Healthy Aging people rocked too, and came up with 3 excellent issues. And what they did really well was bundle. We were a bundling group. So I think everyone sees themselves reflected in these. So if we were to look at age-friendly communities, which is also building a community for all ages, it was really clear that this is intergenerational and multi-sectoral approach, but using that age-friendly foundation and infrastructure. Looking to meet the needs of Oregon's diverse communities, really recognizing that a county is a county and no county is alike, that uniqueness that comes to Oregon. And then thinking about what we would need as higher leadership support and leadership support in general as this movement builds from cities, counties, up to the state, but really having the governor endorse this and see this as a vision and a goal. It's aspirational and inspirational, but we know how to do it and we can do it. There's an infrastructure to follow. So getting that commitment from the governor, potentially having a commission, an age-friendly communities commission or communities for all ages commission, having a policy advisor who focuses on to the governor for healthy aging and age-friendly communities. Really looking for that outreach and that communication strategy. So how do we increase awareness and really have people thinking about the importance and what it means to age well in this state and starting that early on? And having a very strong commitment to empowerment. It was really important that communities have the ability to mobilize and empower themselves to identify their priorities, but even more so really honoring the independent living and the importance of people to be able to engage in their own health and make their own decisions and be part of that instead of being told what to do. So that commitment to that authentic communication and to build trust to make that happen. Recognizing that there's a lack of trust out there maybe in some of the service agencies that are providers and those who are the end users. The second issue is looking to an integrated and comprehensive services that are reimbursed by Medicaid and Medicare. So that kind of captures both the problem and the goal and the solution. But really recognizing that mental health, dental health, physical health, and a long list that we came up with, that we get out of our silos and that we come around true patient-centeredness, which would really mean having multiple care providers in contact and working with each other to help successful optimal health happen for our patients and our community members. So moving out of our siloed sectors, looking at interdisciplinary care and learning. So what does that look like from a medical education perspective? How do we train that earlier on? Again, more community awareness. I think that has really come out loud and clear, and I just heard it in the prior session, is that there needs to be a lot more talking and a lot more broad communication strategies to get conversations happening in people's homes. And then more research and understanding what the data can do, collecting more data and doing more research around how we age and causes of disability. And the last issue, while it kind of is part of those other two issues, but was really important that the group didn't want to lose sight of, is just mental health in general for all of us as we age, and how that doesn't get lost, that it's really called out and such a key piece of what we need to do so that it is integrated into our care and that it's not seen as a negative, that people aren't afraid to talk about it. And this was also really important for caregivers and caregiver health and what that means to take care of those who are taking care of us. So that's the high-level summary. Thank you.
Well, our group on long-term care was a group that rocks too. Unfortunately, they had a rock for a facilitator. And I cannot find where our sheets were, which I was going to go to. But there were several things that really did come out. And first was every group picked transportation as one of their issues. And the thing that really came out on transportation was that it isn't simply medical and getting people to a particular service. It's about the social aspect. And the way I like to put it is, we haven't moved that far if we've moved from warehousing seniors to putting them in storage units where they're not connected with the community. And people want to be connected. So we need to do that. And that transportation itself was a socialization aspect for people, as well as a mental health deal in terms of just getting out of their place, and we needed to take it. And of course, funding is you just can't get around it. It's a key issue around transportation. But there also is a need for better coordination of all of the transportation assets within a community. That we need to look at how we have a central hub where you can find information and where the different resources can be used across programs and across ages where possible. And then finally, that there needs to be safety taken into account in terms of it, and talking about public transportation where seniors often don't feel safe within that, but also just training those drivers and stuff to be sensitive to the needs of the individuals that they're working. The other were two around culture. One was culture change, which was spoken up this morning, and that is that we change the concept that aging is an asset, not a problem within our culture, and looking at that. And some of the sort of solutions were things such as age-friendly communities. In other words, don't talk about simply making it accessible for seniors, making it a community that's accessible for people at all ages. We don't need that dichotomy, because things that work for seniors also work for young parents with kids and a stroller or a bicycle or something, that the similar types of concerns are there. And then talking about intergenerational coordination around assets. In other words, building programs where we use the assets of the seniors, which may be wisdom, may be the caring, the knowledge they have, around that of younger people, which may be the physical ability to do things. And looking at how we build that. The one caution was, not all older people want to be around younger people. So recognizing the fact that, this is individual. The other cultural was the whole idea of making our services culturally responsible. And we were lucky enough in our group to have some participants from the deaf culture. And often that is a culture that is ignored when we are looking at serving people. And so they brought some good points about that, that we need to look at each. And once again, it gets around to being person-centered. Each individual is different. But service providers need to be aware of the culture of that person and how that might affect the situation. So there needs to be training around this awareness of cultures and how to deal with. The other thing that came out was still, it's just like transportation. It's been an issue from the beginning. We discussed it the first White House conference that I was at. We're discussing it again. And that is better information on services. That there's still, even with our ADRCs and stuff, our problem. Some of the individuals went to it around deaf services. Most of the deaf services they found on our ADRC or on the website were in New York, not in Oregon. And yet they were aware from their information referral of a lot of services that were available. So we need to go across our various databases and see how we get to them. And then we need to ask, especially our various subpopulations, let's look at the service, our information and referral. Is it working for you? What isn't working? Are you aware of other services and stuff? And let's see, person-centered was the other big thing. And that really crossed a lot of barriers and actually came around in each of our other discussions. The fact that we need to, one, take into account the cultures of the different individuals. Two, that we need to be training our caregivers, but not just the caregivers, people throughout our spectrum about the various cultures, so that they're even aware that there are issues. And one, I think, interesting one was the whole issue about caregivers and caregivers following the person from setting to setting. Because one of the big issues for individuals, and I think that's especially the case for people who feel very vulnerable, is the trust building. And so having somebody who you've learned to trust go with you to the next setting to help, maybe not do all the care there, but help you in that setting is a real key issue to people. So those were the main ones, and we had a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, I think, and it's going to be a real experience, I think, for state staff to look at those, because I think there were some very specific types of things that will be helpful.
Thanks,
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Okay, so first I'm going to report out on our retirement security breakout, and then I have some closing remarks on behalf of the department. So I'll start with our breakout, which I think was also just an amazing group of people. We came up with quite a few recommendations, and I'm going to try to go really, really fast so that I can tell you what all of them were, because I don't want to leave them out. So the issues that came up most prominently were around Social Security, the adequacy of benefits currently, and then how to expand and protect SSI, and also the retirement and disability programs within Social Security. And then also related is the fiscal health overall of all of those programs. The second issue was the lack of financial education in general. Cost of living in general, the issues around family caregiving, and the overall lack of savings and the fact that we need to rebuild the three-legged stool. So our recommendations within Social Security, there were a number of recommendations. So to address the fiscal health of the programs, or at least part of the program, we talked about removing the earnings cap, so on the payroll tax. So you would get rid of that, which would increase the longevity of the program and the sustainability of the trust fund. And then we would increase all benefits, SSI and the retirement and disability side, to at least, and this was the very minimum, was 120% of federal poverty. And then also we had consensus, I'll just say, around all of these recommendations. There were a couple that we didn't reach total consensus on, but these were the consensus of the group. We would use the Consumer Price Index for the elderly to calculate the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, so that it was a truer reflection of the expenditures for older adults. So their cost of living increase would reflect their expenditures. The second recommendation is around positive media attention about retirement security in general. And that can be done through all different forms of media, but we really thought that that would be something that needs to happen right away. Also, fiscal education and awareness and continuing education, starting in schools and then moving beyond. So throughout the lifespan, we would continue the conversation and the education. And a couple different ways of doing that were recommended. One would be to have an evidence-based pilot that would, be a pilot around education. And it would be a long pilot, because you'd want to measure over a long period of time whether you were successful or not at educating people about retirement security. And then also, it was raised that an intergenerational approach is effective. One of the stories in our group was about how when individuals are younger, maybe they don't understand why some of their earnings essentially are put into a plan that they would use later, and they wanted that in their paycheck immediately. And the older people in the workforce were able to say, no, trust me, you're going to need that. And so having that sort of intergenerational connection about what you need when you're older would be important in educating our youth about retirement security. Then we should address wage inequality. Or eliminate, We came up with a more strong word at the end there that we had consensus around. So eliminate wage inequality. And some of the sub-issues are around gender disparities for people of color. We would address age discrimination or elder discrimination, and then make sure there's increased employment opportunities for older adults. Support the opt-out retirement plan discussed today by Ted Wheeler. Rebuild defined benefit plans and strengthen both defined benefit and defined contribution plans. A couple of ways to do that are to take away incentives that encourage conversion of a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Make plans a little more portable, like they've done in Canada. Encourage really long-term savings, and look at penalties within defined contribution plans to see if they really deter people from cashing out. Because I think in our group there was some indication that, or evidence around the fact that some of those penalties, like the 10% penalty, really doesn't disincentivize people from cashing out, and make sure people understand the value of staying in tax-advantaged plans. Then we would create more innovative ways to save. So thinking about things like an app that would go on your phone and automatically a certain amount of change you might have go straight into a retirement savings plan, as long as there were the appropriate protections in place around the new technology. Address housing. So we endorsed the statement, we had consensus around the statement, housing as a human right in our group. And then also national action around increased revenue, where all entities pay their fair share. And we would look at a new way of budgeting so that we're capturing future savings related to current expenditures and investments. So those were our 10 consensus recommendations. Thank you. Thanks for everyone who participated. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Department of Human Services Aging and People with Disabilities program.
Our director, Mike McCormick, really wanted to be here to thank you at the end of the day, but because it's legislative session, he did get pulled back to Salem for some legislative responsibilities, but he was here all morning, got to hear all the great panel presentations and our keynote presentations. He really sends his best, and he was really happy to see such a packed room here today. Both Mike and myself, we really look forward to the recommendations from all of these breakout sessions, the panels, the speakers. We want to work with you in an ongoing fashion and other stakeholders, the legislature, anyone who wants to get involved so that we continue to be able to have the right types of programs and policies for older adults and people with disabilities in Oregon. And I also want to say thank you so much to Judy Strand and the Governor's Commission, the entire Governor's Commission on Senior Services. So if some of you, I think some of you are still in the room, if you could stand up, I'd like to recognize all of your support. Thank you. So we wouldn't have been able to have an Oregon version of the White House Conference on Aging without the wonderful Governor's Commission. So thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank all of our extremely dedicated staff at Aging and People with Disabilities at the state. In particular, Ann McQueen has been our tireless conference planner and advocate. And then she's had all of these other staff and volunteers around to help today. And so if you could all stand up, just want to recognize you and thank you. I think that's all I have. So thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to turn it back to Judy.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, such a great job. I'm so proud of all of you. And what we're going to do is to work with the facilitators. Staff are going to pull things together and have a tight report that will go to DC. And I'd like to just say from the commission standpoint, we're going to use these ideas for our state work too, from a commission advocacy perspective. So this is just like a dream come true for us. And in light of that, one of our struggles has always been to get statewide representation to feed ideas to the commission. And so a couple of you suggested that we see who's here from different parts of the state. And I realize some people have left, but could you stand or wave if you're on the I-5 corridor? Okay. Southern Oregon. Yeah. Central Oregon. Okay. Eastern Oregon. Okay, we're going to have to go there for the next. Oh, yeah, there they are in the corner. Okay. And how about the coast? Okay, great. Well, that's really good to know. We'll probably know more from your registration, too, so we can figure that out a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you'll get the information sent to you there if you gave us your email. So you'll get to see all the recommendations that you just heard. And then these are my notes from Anne. I'm supposed to tell you to wear those buttons. There's buttons on your table, and it says, "Ask me about the White House Conference on Aging." And that's so you can share what we've done. And then also to remind you to do the purple evaluation sheets, please. We need feedback. And if any of you are interested in the tour of the veterans facility that we heard about, there's some people meeting at 4:45, and you can get a tour right away. And then just before we go, I do have something for Anne. Anne needs to come up here. Okay, this has been very hard to hide, but this is thanks to this. So this is from the commission, and we thank you for your incredible work, Anne. Thank you. I mean, I'm telling you, this woman has not had a lot of sleep, so we need to be very kind to her. She's put her all into it, and it wouldn't have happened without her. So, all right, I think we're done, and I feel very inspired. I thank all the speakers, the panelists, the facilitators, the sponsors and contributors, the planning committee, the volunteers, and mostly I thank all of you for being here, and I'm really, really happy with the results. So bye for now. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee.
Here in Salem as much
I
as
thought
I can,
every
because
American
Salem
would
is my
want,
home
which is
base.
a little common sense government.
American, young, old, rich, poor,